The night sky over Northern California was filled with thunder. Clouds moved like angry waves. Lightning cracked above the trees, and heavy rain fell over a quiet forest. But deep inside the darkness, something strange happened. A bright light suddenly tore through the sky, moving fast, like a falling star, but brighter. It wasn't a star. It was a small spacecraft, spinning out of control. The ship crashed into the trees with a loud explosion, sending animals running in fear. The spacecraft lay broken, half buried in mud and leaves. It glowed faintly. Steam rose from its sides, and sparks jumped from the metal. Slowly, a door opened. A small figure stepped out, trembling. He wasn't human. His skin was pale blue. His eyes were large, full of fear and wonder. His name was Cretan, a young alien, who had never seen a world like this before. He looked around, trying to breathe slowly. His chest rose and fell fast. This wasn't home. This was Earth. Helicopters flew over the forest that night. Cretan hid behind thick trees, afraid. He didn't know what humans were. He didn't know what they would do if they found him. All he knew was that his ship was gone, his mission failed, and he was alone. Days passed. Cretan stayed hidden, moving deeper into the forest. He survived by drinking rainwater and eating wild berries. His eyes grew tired, his body weaker. But one morning, while following the sound of distant cars, he found a narrow path, a road. It led toward a small city. Miles away, in that city, lived a quiet boy named Steve. Steve was 18, soft-spoken, and kind-hearted. But life wasn't kind to him. At school, he was bullied daily. Students laughed at him, pushed him around, stole his books. No one ever stood up for him. He kept his head down and stayed silent. But there was one person who gave him hope: Nancy. Nancy was smart, confident, and kind. Steve admired her from afar. He never had the courage to talk to her. She didn't even know how he felt. Still, just seeing her smile in the hallway gave him a reason to go to school each day. One evening, after another rough day, Steve chose a different path home, a shortcut through the woods. The sky was gray, and the air was cold. He walked, slowly, thinking about life, feeling lost like always. But then, he heard something. A soft rustle in the trees. He stopped. There was movement, quick, nervous. Steve turned his head. Between the trees, he saw two glowing eyes. A figure stood there, half hidden in the shadows. It wasn't a man. It wasn't an animal. It was something else. Steve took a step back. His heart pounded. His breathing grew sharp. He wanted to run, to scream, but he couldn't move. The creature stepped forward, slowly, carefully. Its hands were up, not to attack, but to ask for peace. Then it spoke. "Please, don't scream." Steve froze. The voice was soft, broken, almost like a child's. The creature wasn't dangerous. It was scared, just like him. Steve looked into its eyes. They weren't cold or wild. They were filled with pain. Something inside Steve told him not to run. What are you?" Steve whispered. Cretan didn't answer right away. He looked down, holding his arms close. "I don't want trouble," he said. "I crashed here. I didn't mean to. I just want to go home." Steve didn't know what to say. He had always felt invisible, weak, alone. But now, standing in front of him was a being from another world, and he was asking for help. Cretan looked up again. "Are you going to hurt me?" Steve shook his head slowly. "No, I'm not." They stood there in silence, the forest holding its breath around them. For the first time in a long while, Steve didn't feel like a loser. He felt needed, important. "I'm Steve," he said. "I'm Cretan," the alien replied. That was the moment everything changed. Steve couldn't sleep that night. His mind was spinning with questions. He had just met an alien, a real one. And somehow, instead of fear, he felt calm. There was something about Cretan that felt familiar. Not in looks, but in the way he spoke, soft, unsure, lost. Just like Steve felt every day at school. The next afternoon, Steve skipped his usual route home. He took the forest path again, his backpack filled with bread, water, and a blanket. He didn't know if Cretan would still be there. Maybe it was all a dream. Maybe he imagined it. But then he saw the broken tree, the patch of crushed grass. And finally, Cretan sitting against a rock, shivering. Steve stepped forward and gently placed the bag down. Cretan looked up, surprised. "You came back." "I said I wouldn't hurt you," Steve said with a shrug. "Figured you might be hungry." Cretan opened the bag slowly, like he was scared it might disappear. He picked up the bread and took a small bite. His eyes lit up. "This is amazing," he said, chewing with a smile. "What is it?" "White bread," Steve laughed. "Probably the cheapest thing on earth." "To me, it tastes like gold," Cretan said. They sat together as the sun dipped behind the trees. Steve asked questions: where Cretan came from, what happened to his ship, why he came to Earth. But Cretan didn't answer much. He seemed unsure, or maybe he was hiding something. Still, the connection between them grew. Steve finally felt like someone was listening. Someone who didn't judge him, didn't laugh at his stutter, didn't care that he wasn't strong or cool. And Cretan, he was no longer alone. Over the next few days, they met every evening. Steve brought books, snacks, even a flashlight. Cretan learned to read simple words. He watched cartoons on Steve's phone and asked hundreds of questions about Earth. Steve laughed more in those days than he had in years. But school was still the same. The teasing, the silence, the looks. Nancy, however, started noticing something different about Steve. He didn't sit in the back of class anymore. He spoke more. He even answered a question in science, something he never did before. One day after school, she walked up to him. "Hey," she said. "You okay? You seem different lately." Steve nearly dropped his books. "Me? I'm fine." She smiled. "Good. You seem happier." Steve nodded, but inside, he was nervous. He had never spoken to her like this. Her voice was warm, and her eyes kind, the way he had always imagined. They talked for a few minutes before walking home. Steve took a different turn at the last moment, pretending his house was the other way. He didn't want Nancy to know about Cretan. Not yet. Later that night, he told Cretan what happened. "You like her," Cretan said, grinning. Steve looked away. "Maybe, but it's not like she'd ever like me back." "You're wrong," Cretan said. "She talked to you. That means something." Steve smiled. For once, he felt hopeful, but that hope didn't last long. The next morning, a breaking news report flashed on every TV screen. Strange lights seen above the city. Unknown aircraft reported. Authorities investigating. Steve stared at the screen. His chest tightened. It wasn't just Cretan anymore. He ran to the forest that afternoon. Cretan was already waiting, his face pale. "They're here," he said. Quietly. "I felt them." "Who?" Steve asked. "My enemies," Cretan said. "They're looking for me." Steve's hands shook. "What do we do?" Cretan looked toward the sky, his eyes full of fear. "I don't know." Back in the city, Nancy sat alone, watching the news. Something didn't feel right. The fear in Steve's eyes yesterday, the change in his voice. She knew he was hiding something. And soon, she would find out what. Everything was about to change. Nancy couldn't stop thinking about Steve. Something was off. His eyes had changed. He seemed distracted, nervous. That news about the strange lights, it had scared everyone. But Steve's reaction was different. It wasn't shock. It was something deeper. Like he already knew. That evening, she followed him. Steve walked fast, looking over his shoulder more than once. He didn't take the main road. He turned into the forest. Nancy stayed quiet, keeping a safe distance. After 10 minutes, Steve disappeared into the trees near an old barn. She crept closer. What was he hiding? Then she saw that a blue-skinned figure with glowing eyes stood just a few feet from Steve. Not tall, not threatening, but not human. Nancy gasped. Steve turned around, his face pale. "Nancy, what are you?" She stepped back, eyes wide. What is that?" The creature raised its hands. "I won't hurt you." Steve moved toward her. "Wait. Listen, he's not dangerous. He's my friend." Nancy stared at him, trying to understand. "You're serious? That's real." Steve nodded. "His name is Cretan. He crashed here by accident. He's been hiding ever since." Cretan took a step forward, his voice calm. "I didn't mean to come here. I had no choice." Nancy looked at both of them, then slowly lowered her hands. "This is insane." "I know," Steve said softly. "But you needed to know." They sat together in the barn. Cretan looked nervous but calm. He had never met anyone else besides Steve. But there was something kind in Nancy's eyes. "I trust her," Steve said. Cretan closed his eyes, then opened them slowly. "I can show you," he said. "My story, but it might hurt." Nancy and Steve looked at each other and nodded. Cretan reached out and touched their hands. Suddenly, the air around them changed. The walls of the barn faded away. Colors swirled, stars blinked, and in an instant, they were somewhere else. Not Earth. It was a beautiful planet with floating cities, silver trees, and glowing skies. Tall towers rose into the clouds, and creatures walked peacefully beneath them. Cretan's home. They saw a younger version of Cretan laughing, running through the halls of a bright palace. His parents, tall, royal-looking beings, watched him with pride. "That's my family," Cretan whispered. "My mother and father were leaders, loved by everyone." But the peace didn't last. A dark shadow appeared in the sky. A giant ship arrived, and with it, something terrifying, the demon alien. A massive creature with burning red eyes, sharp armor, and endless power. He wanted the throne, Cretan said. He wanted to control the galaxy. The demon attacked. Buildings fell. Fire filled the sky. Cretan's parents stood against him and died. Just before their final breath, they gave Cretan a small, glowing box. "It holds power," he said. "A gift and a curse. Only I can open it. Only I can protect it." They saw young Cretan escape in a small ship, crying, holding the box close. He watched his world disappear behind him. Then everything turned black. The vision ended. They were back in the barn. Nancy's eyes were full of tears. Steve looked away, his fists clenched. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I miss them," Cretan whispered. "But I can't go home. Not until the demon is stopped." Steve stood up. "And now he's here. He followed you." Cretan nodded. "He wants the box. If he gets it, he'll destroy Earth next." Nancy looked at Steve. "We can't let that happen." Steve agreed. "You're not alone anymore, Cretan. We'll help you." Cretan looked at them both, his voice shaking. "But it's dangerous." "We don't care," Nancy said. "We fight together." Outside, the wind picked up. In the far distance, something strange appeared in the sky. A dark shape, silent and massive, floating above the clouds. The demon had arrived, and this time, he wasn't hiding. A deep hum filled the sky above California. Birds stopped singing. Dogs barked without reason. Somewhere high above the clouds, a massive shadow hovered silently. People pointed at the sky. News channels showed strange shapes, blinking lights, and a sudden drop in air pressure. Something big had entered Earth's atmosphere, and no one knew what it was. But Steve, Nancy, and Cretan did. Inside the old barn, they stood together, faces pale. "The demon had arrived. He knows I'm here," Cretan said quietly. "He'll search for the box." Steve pulled the blanket off the wooden crate in the corner. Inside it, hidden beneath food supplies, was the glowing object. The mystery box. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. "This box," Cretan explained, "was made by my parents. It holds energy strong enough to destroy galaxies, but only if opened the right way. If the demon gets it, he can't open it, but he'll try, and his rage will burn everything." Nancy stepped back. "So what do we do now? Run?" "No," Cretan said. "We fight smart." They spent hours building a plan. Steve used his phone to track military alerts. Nancy kept watch on the news. Strange power readings were being detected near the city. The government had sent drones. But no one had seen the demon clearly yet. "He's hiding," Cretan said. "He doesn't want the world to panic yet." That night, the trio left the barn and moved deeper into the woods. Cretan showed them a hidden cave, an old escape pod, half buried under rocks. He had kept it quiet, hoping never to use it. Again, inside were pieces of alien tech, light shields, power shards, and a broken hologram recorder. With Nancy's brain, Steve's hands, and Cretan's knowledge, they worked as a team. They built traps, power sensors, and a signal jammer to block the demon's tracking. "This forest will be our shield," Nancy said. But their time was running out. The demon had landed, not in the forest, but near the coast. It took only a few hours for him to destroy a military base, melt a communications tower, and send a message through hacked satellites. "Give me the boy. Give me the box, or Earth will fall." Steve and Nancy watched the screen, frozen. "It's me he wants," Cretan said. "And I'm tired of running." Steve stepped forward. "Then we bring the fight to him." Nancy shook her head. "That's suicide." But Cretan's eyes glowed bright. "Not if we use the box the right way." He opened his hand, and a small crystal formed, glowing blue, shaped like a drop of water. "This is a key. My parents left it in the box. With it, I can unlock part of the power, just enough to fight back." Steve and Nancy nodded. They weren't just friends anymore. They were a team. They waited until midnight. Cretan stepped into the clearing first, carrying the box in both hands. The moonlight touched the edge of the forest as the wind howled softly. From the shadows, something moved. The trees bent. The ground shook. And out of the dark mist came a figure, tall, armored in black and red, with eyes like molten lava. The demon alien that he walked toward Cretan slowly, every step shaking the earth. "You came," he said. His voice was deep, like thunder trapped inside a cave. "I'm not afraid of you," Cretan said. The demon laughed. "You should be." But just as he raised his hand to strike, the traps lit up. Bright lights exploded from the trees. Nanotech wires shot from the ground. Sound blasters activated, stunning the demon for just a few seconds. That's all Cretan needed. He placed the crystal into the mystery box. A wave of light burst from it, throwing everyone backward. The demon screamed, shielding his eyes. Cretan rose into the air, glowing bright blue, his power finally awake. Steve ran to Nancy, shielding her from the blast. "It's happening." Cretan's voice echoed through the air. "You took my family. You destroyed my world. I won't let you take this one." The battle began. Trees shattered. The ground cracked. Light and fire clashed in the sky. The demon fought with rage, but Cretan fought with purpose. And he wasn't alone anymore. Hidden behind fallen trees, Steve aimed the last power blaster they built. Now, he fired. The shot hit the demon's armor, cracking it. Nancy activated the pulse switch. Cretan used the last of his energy to push the box forward, and with one final beam, the light swallowed the demon whole. A flash, then silence. Smoke floated through the trees. The air was still, like time had stopped. Steve slowly opened his eyes. The ground beneath him was cracked, covered in ash. Nancy lay nearby, coughing, her arms covering her head. "Cretan?" Steve called out, his voice shaking. "No answer." He stood, scanning the field where the final light had exploded. Trees were torn apart. The grass was burned. But there, at the center of the clearing, something moved. Cretan. He was on one knee, breathing heavily. The mystery box lay in front of him, now dull, its glow gone. The demon was nowhere in sight. Nothing remained of him except a deep black mark in the ground, like a scar burned into earth itself. Nancy ran toward Cretan. "You did it." Cretan looked up, weak but alive. "We did it." Steve helped him stand. "You're hurt." Cretan nodded. "I used more power than I should have. But it's over. He's gone." For a long moment, the three of them just stood there, quiet, still, together. No cameras, no army, no news, just three friends. And the end of a war no one else knew even happened. Later that night, they hid the box deep underground, far from the forest. Cretan said the power inside was gone, burned out when he used it against the demon. "But what if someone comes again?" Nancy asked. Cretan looked at the stars. "Then I hope someone like you is here to protect this world." They walked back to the barn in silence. The old place that once felt like a hiding spot now felt like home. Cretan sat down slowly, resting his head against the wooden wall. "I can't stay," he said. That Steve's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "My people, my planet. They need to know what happened. They need to know the demon is gone. And maybe now I can go home again." Nancy nodded, trying to hold back tears. "You're a king now, aren't you?" Cretan smiled softly. "I never wanted to be, but maybe it's time I stop running from it." Steve didn't say anything at first. Then he stepped forward and hugged Cretan. "You were my first real friend," he whispered. Cretan smiled. "And you were mine." The next morning, Steve and Nancy walked with him to the hill above the forest. The escape pod that brought Cretan to Earth was barely working, but with some of their repairs, it had just enough power to send him home. That he stepped inside, then turned around one last time. "You changed me," he said. "Both of you. I'll never forget it." Then, with a soft hum, the pod rose into the air. It glowed brighter and brighter until it disappeared into the clouds, leaving only a soft breeze behind. Steve and Nancy stood there for a long time, looking up at the sky. "I hope he makes it," Nancy said. "He will," Steve replied. He already made it this far. Weeks passed. The world slowly forgot about the UFO sightings. News reports stopped. People moved on. But for Steve and Nancy, nothing was the same. Steve wasn't afraid anymore. He spoke more, laughed louder, and even stood up to the kids who once pushed him around. People noticed. Nancy and Steve became close, more than just friends. She would smile every time she looked at him now, and he finally understood why. One night, as they sat on the hill where Cretan left, Nancy handed Steve a small box. "What's this?" he asked. "I made it," she said, "to remember him." Inside was a tiny glowing stone. Not alien, just a glass bead, blue, soft, peaceful. Like Cretan's eyes, Steve smiled. He'd like this. They sat together in silence, the stars above them endless and full of stories they hadn't heard yet. Far, far away, in a galaxy they would never see, a young king stood in front of a new throne. The people cheered. He raised his hand, not in power, but in peace. Cretan had come home, but he never forgot the planet that gave him hope, or the two humans who taught him what it meant to be brave.